Hello everyone, welcome to the session. So in this lecture we are going to discuss about the topic the Mughal Empire. In our previous lecture we have already discussed about some topics of Mughal Empire, that the overview of Mughal Empire, who were these Mughals, how they got this name of Mughals, and how Babur came and the battle of Panipat was fought, and we have discussed about the establishment of Mughal Empire in Indian subcontinent. And then we have also discussed about the Babur's conquest, then about Humayun, about Sher Shah Suri. In this particular lecture, we are going to discuss about the son of Humayun or the successor of Humayun known as Akbar, or the original name was Jalaluddin Muhammad, who had a very long rule, or you can say the Akbar's reign was the largest in the Mughal Empire. We will discuss everything about Akbar. Basically, it is a case study of Akbar, about his rule, about his conquest, about his policies, about Akbarnama and Ain-e-Akbari, what were these things. We will discuss about the religious life during Akbar's reign and about his personal and life interest as well. So let's begin our lecture. So Akbar ruled from 1556 to 1605. After the death of Humayun, Akbar got the throne, or he had become the successor. So Akbar was only 13 years old, okay, when Humayun died, and when he became the emperor of India, he was just 13 years old of age. His reign can be divided into 3 periods, okay. Now in 3 periods, Akbar's reign was divided, that is based upon his conquests. First comes the 1556 to 1570, the time period between these years. There Akbar became independent of the regent Bairam Khan and other members of his domestic staff. So this was the time of from 1556 to 1570, when he was very younger in age. This was the time though he became independent of the regent Bairam Khan. So Bairam Khan was a person who was the member of his staff, of his army, and also from his domestic staff. This was the time period when he grew up and he became independent and started taking his own decisions. So this is one of the periods of Akbar's life or Akbar's rule. His military campaigns were launched against the Suris and other Afghans also. So during this period only, from 1556 to 1570, various military campaigns were organized or were launched specifically against the Suris, the successors of Sher Shah Suri, and other Afghans also, against the neighboring kingdoms of Malwa and Gondwana, and to suppress the revolt of his half-brother Mirza Hakim. So Mirza Hakim was his half-brother of Akbar. He was also revolting against Akbar, and to suppress him, he had also launched some military campaigns, and also against the Uzbeks, who were the Mongolian invaders. In 1568, the Sisodia capital of Chittor was also captured by Akbar in the year of 1568, who was under the rule of the Chittorgarh was under the rule of the Rajput rulers. The Sisodia capital was captured and seized, and then the region of Ranthambore was also captured by Akbar in 1569. Now these were the areas that were covered during the time period of 1556 to 1570, and in this time period Akbar have captured most of the part or conquered over many regions of India that were not being the region of him. He has also suppressed the power of Mirza Hakim, who used to be his half brother. Then next time period, we have seen that the Akbar's rule was divided into 3 periods. First we have discussed, this is the second one, that is from 1570 to 1585. Now in this time period, military campaigns in Gujarat were followed by campaigns in the east in Bihar, Bengal and Odisha. So he had already captured the part of Ranthambore and the Chittor, that is areas covering the Rajasthan region. Then from 1570 to 1585, he captured the eastern part of India, that is Bihar, Bengal and Odisha also. These campaigns were complicated by 1579 to 80 revolt in support of Mirza Hakim. So here people were supporting Mirza Hakim, who was the half brother of Akbar, and a revolt was caused against Akbar in this period, and because of this, these campaigns against the eastern provinces, that is Bihar, Bengal and Odisha, it became complicated for Akbar to launch such military campaigns in this particular region because people were supporting, and revolt was caused in the support of Mirza Hakim. Then the third and the last comes the 1585 to 1605 of time period, that is the end of the Akbar's rule till his death. So this was the time period when the Akbar's empire was expanded at its peak. Campaigns were launched in the northwest also. So Kandahar was seized from the Safavids. Kandahar, basically known as Gandhar, that is present in the Afghan region. It was also seized by Akbar, means the Afghan region was also till Gandhar Akbar has covered or have captured from the Safavids. Kashmir, the area of Kashmir. These are the areas that were present in the northwest of the Indian subcontinent. And Indian subcontinent is not the same as today's map of India. It was extended towards Afghanistan, to Balochistan, to Sindh, and in the southern part, and from this side, from the eastern part, the Bangladesh, and it was covered up to the Bangladesh and Myanmar. So Kandahar was seized, which was the part of Afghanistan. Kashmir was also annexed by Emperor Akbar, as also Kabul after the death of Mirza Hakim. So Kabul was also captured after the death of Mirza Hakim. When Mirza Hakim died, Akbar also captured the capital of Kabul. Now campaigns in the Deccan were started. Deccan, basically the present day Maharashtra, or the southern part of India, where the Marathas were ruling the area. The Deccan were ruled by the Marathas there. So campaigns in the Deccan started, and Berar, Khandesh and parts of Ahmednagar were annexed. So we have discussed the empire of Vijayanagar and Bahmani kingdom were ruling in the southern part of India. These were the same people who were ruling at that time also. So campaigns in the Deccan started, and Berar, Khandesh and some parts of Ahmednagar were also annexed and captured by Akbar. He started ruling over these capitals as well. So in the last years of his reign, during the last years, that is near about 1605, 1603 to 1605, Akbar was distracted by the rebellion of Prince Salim. So he distracted, or he has to face various issues by his own son Salim, Prince Salim, who later on came to be known as Emperor Jahangir, who became the successor of the emperor's kingdom, and his actual name was Salim, who later on became Jahangir. So Salim himself became rebellion against Akbar, and in his last times, in his last few years, Akbar have to face the rebellion from his own son, that is from Salim or Jahangir. So these are the three parts in which the reign of Akbar or the rule of Akbar can be divided. The parts are divided in the form of the conquest he has done in various regions. Firstly, he covered or he captured in the area of Rajasthan, covering the Sisodia capital in Chittor and the Ranthambore. Then in the next part of his ruling, in the second part, he had captured the eastern provinces, that is the Bihar, Bengal and Orissa, and in the third he had captured over the Deccan areas or the kingdoms that were ruled by the Maratha Empire at that time. So this is how Akbar have annexed the capitals. Now one thing you need to know about Akbar here is that he did not capture completely over the kingdoms, but he has given the power of the existing kings. He had not removed the existing kings, but he was controlling. Annexation means he was controlling over those territories, over those kingdoms from above. He had become the central province, and all the provinces came under the central province according to the rule of Akbar. So he did not stopped the ruling or the kingdom of any particular ruler who was already ruling over some territories. He only put his control upon them, and putting the control means they have to pay the taxes, and whatever the requirement, the army support have to be provided to Akbar, and they cannot go against Akbar's rule. So he maintained political relationships with all the other kingdoms of India. Now what was the Akbar's administrative life, or how his courts used to run? We will discuss about it. So firstly, let's discuss about Akbar's Navratnas and their brief detail. So Akbar having Navratnas. Navratnas means the 9 gems of Akbar. So here is the list of the 9 gems of Akbar. Okay, or the Navratnas. Navratnas means 9 gems. These were the ministers in the Akbar's court. He has appointed or made a team of 9 gems, and they were all having their own. Basically, these were the team leaders, and they have people under them also. But basically, these were the main 9 ministers in the Akbar's court. Like in today's time, if we see that there is a prime minister, and then there are the cabinet ministers present in the parliament. Okay, the ruling party, there is always a ruling party who having a prime minister and a council of minister, and these ministers are assigned with various portfolios. So this was also present during the Akbar's time, Akbar being the prime minister, and the ruling party was Akbar's and he being the prime minister, and all these 9 gems were the cabinet ministers or the main ministers of Akbar court. Now who are these ministers or these Navratnas or 9 gems of Akbar's court? First comes Abul Fazl. So Abul Fazl or Abul Fazl also you can say, he was Akbar's chief advisor and author of Akbar Nama. So whatever we know about Akbar this time, this information is derived from the Akbar Nama which was written by Akbar's chief advisor and his very good friend Abul Fazl, Grand Wazir of Prime Minister of Akbar. So he was the main minister or you can say the Wazir of Akbar and the chief advisor in Akbar's court. Then comes Faizi. Who was Faizi? He was Akbar's poet laureate, education minister of Akbar and mentor of Shahzadas. So Faizi was the education minister in Akbar's court and he was also the poet laureate, and he also became the teacher or the mentor for all the Shahzadas. Shahzadas means all the sons of Akbar. So he was the teacher of all the sons of Akbar, he was the poet in Akbar's court, and he was also the education minister. Then comes the Tansen. You always heard about Tansen several times. He was a great musician, singer, a Hindu singer. So Tansen was Hindu by religion, he was not Muslim. So what we can see here that there were also Hindu people also in the Akbar's court. The ministers were also Hindu in religion. So a Hindu singer who converted to Islam afterwards, cultural minister and singer of Akbar. So Tansen was the singer in Akbar's court. You have always heard that a rag was done by Tansen which used to bring the rain. So Tansen was that level of great singer that his rag Malhar can lead towards the rain also. So he was one of the minister or generally called as the cultural minister in Akbar's court. Next comes Birbal. So a noble known for his wittiness, and he was the foreign minister of Akbar. Somewhere it is referred that Birbal was also Hindu from religion, but it is not exactly known, and this is also a controversial figure in the history. But we have always heard about the stories of Akbar and Birbal, how the wittiness of Birbal always impressed Akbar. So he was another minister in his court, and basically he used to deal with the foreign affairs of the court. Next comes Todarmal. So Todarmal was Akbar's finance minister. Todarmal used to see all the finances in Akbar's court. Next comes Raja Man Singh. Now who was Raja Man Singh? He was the chief of staff of Akbar's Mughal army. He was leading the Mughal army at that time. He was the chief commander and he was also a very trusted general of Akbar. Now Raja Man Singh belonged to the territories of Jodhpur, or you can say from the Rajasthan, from the Rajputs. He belonged from the Rajput lineage, but after losing their territory, he had become the courtman or the courtier in the court of Akbar. Then next comes the Abdul Rahim Khane Khana. Who was he? He was the defense minister of Akbar, a noble and a renowned poet. Abdul Rahim Khane Khana was the son of Salima Sultana Begum, and he had become the defense minister in the Akbar's court, and he was also a very renowned poet. So we knew that Akbar married Salima Begum after the death of his husband, and Rahim Khan was adopted by Akbar. Next comes Fakir Aziuddin. So he was the religious minister in Akbar's court, and finally Mulla Do Pyaza, who was the home minister of Akbar's court. So these are the 9 gems or the Navratnas. We generally know them with the name of Navratnas of Akbar. Abu Fazl, Faizi, Tansen, Birbal, Todarmal, Raja Man Singh, Abdul Rahim Khane Khana, Fakir Aziuddin, Mulla Do Pyaza. So this particular topic, knowing the 9 gems or the Navratnas and what were their duties, what were their posts in Akbar's court, this is a very important thing to remember for you from the exam point of view. Now let's discuss about the personal life and interest of the Akbar, and basically here we are going to discuss about the wives and the children of Akbar. So Akbar married to several women, okay. He was not having one single wife, but he has several wives. There comes the Ruqayya Sultan Begum, who called as the first wife of Akbar. Then Salima Sultana Begum, who was the widowed of the one of the commander of Akbar's army. After his death, Akbar married to Salima Sultan Begum, who generally known as the third wife of Akbar. then Bibi Daulat Shah, Kasima Banu Begum, Bakari Begu, and finally Maryam-uz-Zamani. Maryam-uz-Zamani is also considered to be as Jodha Begum at several places. You must have heard about Jodha Begum or Hargu Begum, or referred from various names. You have also seen various movies and TV serials talking about the story of Akbar and Jodha. So this Maryam-uz-Zamani is generally considered to be as the Jodha Begum, but it is not clear. It is also a kind of controversial topic. Then Gauhar-un-Nisa Begum got recognition as Akbar's wife. He was having several wives, but these were the main one who got the recognition to be the Akbar's wife. Among them, Maryam-uz-Zamani was the main because she was the person who gave birth to Salim and who afterwards became the successor of the Mughal Empire, that is Jahangir. So among all these wives, total 11 children were there. Okay, Akbar having total 11 children, he had 11 children, but only Salim got the recognition as the son of Akbar. So Akbar was having lot of children, like around 11 children, but Salim, who later on became Emperor Jahangir, who was the son of Maryam-uz-Zamani or considered as the son of Jodha Begum also, afterwards he became the emperor of the Mughal Empire. Now let's discuss about the literature that done in the time period of Akbar. So Akbarnama and Ain-e-Akbari. Now what are these things? As I have already told you that Abul Fazl, who was a very close friend of Akbar, wrote the Akbarnama on the instructions of Akbar that defines all the life events of Akbar. So Akbar ordered one of his close friends and courtiers, Abul Fazl, to write a history of his reign. Okay, Abul Fazl wrote a 3-volume history of Akbar's reign titled Akbarnama. So this Akbarnama is divided into total 3 volumes. The first volume dealt with Akbar's ancestors, okay, about all the ancestors of Akbar, whatever the family lineage is. Everything we get about the ancestry of Akbar is from Akbarnama only. The second volume recorded the events of Akbar reign. There are various events that took place, or the 3 conquests that into which Akbar's life is divided was provided in the second volume of Akbarnama. Then the third volume is the Ain-e-Akbari. It was named as Ain-e-Akbari and it deals with Akbar's administration, household, army, the revenues and the geography of his empire. So Ain-e-Akbari is the third volume of Akbarnama, which shows how the administration work of the Akbar was done, how the household were generally called as haram, where the queens used to live, and in the harems there was also a proper administrative function was in the process. So household, army, the revenues and the geography of his empire was completely discussed in Ain-e-Akbari, which was the third volume of Akbarnama. It also provides rich details about the traditions and the culture of people living in India. So Akbarnama, it consists of so many things, having 3 volumes in it. Definitely it has given a lot of details about the time of Mughal Empire. The most interesting aspect about the Ain-e-Akbari is its rich statistical detail about things as diverse as crops, yields, prices, wages and revenues as well. So minute details were also put in the Ain-e-Akbari that used to talk about the administrative and everything about the Akbar's reign, and there were very statistical detail, means numbers are provided in Ain-e-Akbari that talks about the production of crops that time, what was the economic condition that time, or in today's time, like we say that GDP is this up to this percent, the growth of GDP is in that percent. So at that time some calculations were done according to which the economy, the production was defined, and all those things were mentioned in Ain-e-Akbari by Abu Fazl, which was the third volume of Akbarnama. Now let's discuss about Akbar's policies. So Abul Fazl explained that the empire was divided into provinces called Subas. Okay, so there are certain terms that were used during the Mughal Empire. So the provinces means the empire were divided into various provinces, and these provinces called as the Subas, governor by a Subedar. Okay, and the governor of these Subas, of these provinces, called as the Subedar, who carried out both political and military functions. So Akbar, being the ruler of the central province, he was ruling from the center, and then there were various provinces which called as Subas, and the governor who were ruling over those Subas called as the Subedars, and the duty of these Subedars not only restrict to political but as well as to the military functions. Then each province also had a financial officer, and this financial officer were called as the Diwans. Okay, so now we have three terms here: the Subas, that means the provinces, the Subedars, who were the head or who were ruling over these provinces, and then the financial officers, who called as the Diwans. For the maintenance of peace and order in his province, the Subedar was supported by other officers such as the military paymaster, who used to be called as Bhakshi, the minister in charge of religious and charitable patronage called as Sadr, the military commanders called as Fauzdars, and the town police commanders known as the Kotwals. So still we several times heard about this term like Kotwals and the Fauzdars. Okay, still we heard these terms. These came from the time of Mughal Empire only. So these were generally the today's time police officers of that time, or the who used to maintain law and order and peace and order in the territory. Okay, so these were all the supervisor of all of them, or the governor was the Subedar, okay, who was the governor. The officers called as Bhakshi, the Sadr, Fauzdars, and the Kotwals. So this was the administrative units, various administrative units of Akbar's policies, how the provinces were divided into Subas. The governors who were appointed for those provinces were Subedars. There were financial officers for each of these provinces, or these Subas were the Diwans, and then for maintaining peace and order, all of these like the Bakshi, the Sadr, the Fauzdars, and the Kotwals were present, who used to play the role of military and the police officers of that time. So this was the administrative functioning, or the various administrative units of the Akbar's rule. Now let's discuss about the religious life during the Akbar's reign. While Akbar was at Fatehpur Sikri during 1570s, he started discussions on religion with the ulemas, Brahmins, Jesuit priests who were Roman Catholics and Zoroastrians. So Akbar was not only involved with the Islamic culture, but he was a kind of secular person. In today's language, if we say, he started discussion in his last times, that is from 1570s, with various religious scholars. In Islam they were called as the ulemas, in Hindus they were called as the Brahmins, then there were Christianity also prevailing because the impact of Roman Empire in India, the Catholics and the Zoroastrians. These discussions took place in the Ibadat Khana. Ibadat Khana is a place of worship where Ibadat means to pray and Khana means any place. So Ibadat Khana is a place of worship where they all come and discuss over various religious issues. He used to discuss with various religious scriptures with all the religions that were preaching at that time, basically the Hinduism, the Islam and the Christianity. He was interested in the religion and social customs of different people because there were different people there were different religions were preaching. So he got interest in all the socio and religious affairs. Akbar's interaction with people of different faiths made him realize that religious scholars who emphasized ritual and dogma were often bigots. So while interacting with various religious scholars, he get to know about so many things, like when he interacted different people also who used to follow different faiths, different beliefs. This made him realize that religious scholars, the scholars or the people who are much into the religious activities and who emphasized much on the rituals and the dogmas, were often bigots. Bigots are the people who follow any particular religion and neglect all the other faiths and beliefs that are in the existence. The person who is intolerant for all the other or different beliefs than him. So he considered them as the bigots, and this made him realize that such scholars who particularly emphasize on the rituals are generally the bigots. Their teachings created divisions and disharmony amongst his subjects. So because of these things, why he used to do such discussions with the religious scholars and with people who are following different faiths and beliefs, in order to understand the religious situation of his kingdom, and by doing such discussion he came out of the conclusion that these are the things that is creating division among the society because of its bigotry nature, and creating disharmony among his subjects also. So this, by doing such discussions, he realized that it is necessary to make all the religions united. This eventually led Akbar to the idea of Sulh-i-Kul or universal peace. So the concept of Sulh-i-Kul was introduced during the reign of Akbar, which means universal peace. Universal peace means when all the religions come together and live with brotherhood and harmony with fraternity. This idea of tolerance did not discriminate between people of different religions in his realm. So Akbar was the person who had not created any kind of division between the Muslims and the non-Muslims, though he himself used to follow Islam as their religion, but he was much of the secular nature because of having a Hindu wife, and many ministers in his own court were Hindus. So he was a person who used to try to be secular as much as possible. So instead it focused on a system of ethics, honesty, justice, peace that was universally applicable. Instead of following the rules and regulations of any particular religion, he focused on a kind of uniformity, a form of universal peace, whose main aim is just to promote honesty, justice and peace in the society. Abul Fazl helped Akbar in framing a vision of governance around this idea of Sulh-i-Kul. So if we compare this from the today's time, everyone is demanding for uniform civil code, that all the religions must follow a similar kind of code. This already was done by Akbar in his realm by making Sulh-i-Kul, which was the concept just like that of the uniform civil code of today's time. He created a system of universal peace in which Abu Fazl, who was his chief advisor, helped in framing a vision, helped in framing the rules and regulation of the governance around the ideas of Sulh-i-Kul, that is universal peace. This principle of governance was followed by Jahangir and Shah Jahan as well. So not only Akbar had followed the concept of Sulh-i-Kul, but his successors Jahangir and Jahangir's successors Shah Jahan also followed the concept of Sulh-i-Kul, that is of universal peace. As much as honesty, justice and peace prevailed in the society, any kingdom will automatically grow. So in this particular lecture, we have discussed everything. We done a complete case study of Akbar, who was the successor of Humayun and who used to be or who came to be known as Akbar the Great because of his great realm for the very long period of time. He ruled from so many years in his lifetime, and after his death, Jahangir gained that position. So for now, this is it in this lecture. We will discuss more about Jahangir, Shah Jahan and Aurangzeb also in our further lecture. But for now, this is it. Thank you so much for your patience listening. Take care and bye-bye.